Good morning and welcome to another Vlogmas video. So I am going to get ready to go to rehearsal. I'm meeting with Santiago, my best friend, my pianist, and we are going to be rehearsing the Gaubert Ballade. If you've seen the previous videos, go catch up on that. If not, but if you've seen them, you know that we are going to be recording the Gaubert Ballade tomorrow, Thursday. Today's Wednesday, and it's kind of a last minute thing, so there's a little bit of cramming involved, but it's gonna be great. So far this morning I spent some time listening to our recording from our rehearsal the other day and following along with the score, the piano part that also has the flute part, so that I can really understand any spots that need to be looked at today, and it's hopefully just going to help our rehearsal run a bit smoother. So that's a great tip if you are trying to do something kind of last minute, and also if you're not, it just really helps the rehearsal process, and you'll notice things that you probably wouldn't have necessarily noticed, very small details that you wouldn't have noticed in the moment. It's a lot easier to then go back and listen and say, okay, this is why this wasn't lining up here. And it just really helps out the process. Dramatic. That's drama. Why are you sitting under my chair if you don't like the flute? You don't have to stay in here. You can go out there. You're in the danger zone. Yeah, I made all these different scenarios. This is like opening the story, and then at the end it's like it's gonna be tragic, but then the other part it's like, but there's also gonna be some happiness when it's the chord that has the E. And then that one is like, oh, do you want to know what's gonna happen? It's like curiosity. This is like, are you sure you want to know? Are you curious? And then it's like,
many years ago. Okay, let's play with so much pathos the first chord.
So rehearsal went well. It went a lot better than our rehearsal on, what was it? Our first rehearsal the other day. So that's great considering the recording is tomorrow. But now I thought I would do a little practicing. I have to teach you a little bit. So I'm gonna try to get some practicing in now. And then I thought I would also talk to you about how I approach practicing something when I don't have a lot of time. Also, I'm in a good mood because my hard drive was delivered today and they fixed it. I was able to post a video earlier. That's like one of the last videos before my Vlogmas videos. So I'm just feeling really relieved about that. So very grateful that it was able to be fixed. So one way to learn something when you're in a time crunch and you need to learn something fast is actually to slow it down. It's maybe counterintuitive, but the faster we just try to rush through something and really cram it, the more likely we are to be learning wrong notes, learning wrong rhythms, making mistakes and reinforcing them, and that's not what we want, especially when we don't have a lot of time. So I would say slow it down and break it down into sections. And maybe a section is one line of music. Maybe a section is 2 measures. Maybe it's half a measure. It really depends on the difficulty of the piece. So I would say slow it down, break it into chunks, use the metronome to work up click by click. And although it's kind of a pain, I find that that is a way that really gets something under my fingers. And yeah, like I said, it feels counterintuitive. We want to go fast. We are panicking and we're thinking we don't have enough time, but you do. You don't want to make more work for yourself. Another way when you're in a time crunch and you need to fix a passage that's really technically challenging, try changing up the rhythm. I use this all the time in my practice every day. I use it with my students. I recommend it to everybody. It's one of the best ways, I think, to get something to stick into your fingers. Instead of playing straight 8th notes, and then you can reverse it. You can get super creative besides just doing the long, short, long and the short, long rhythm. Another thing along that same line is to break it down into smaller groups, smaller chunks of notes. For example, I could break these 8th notes down into groups of 2. Now groups of 3. Now groups of 4. Another method is to put a certain combination of notes onto a loop. So if I was having a lot of trouble moving between this A flat and this F, It's also important to note that if I was making a mistake and it wasn't just a fluke, it was a mistake that I kept making, that is information that's a spot that needs to be reinforced by one of the methods that I've mentioned. Another way that I mentioned earlier when you're in a time crunch is to record yourself. And this is something that's just great in general. And if you can record your rehearsal, you're going to be able to listen back and get information like I mentioned earlier. There's often things that you'll be practicing over and over, and if it's not getting any better, that might be a moment to record yourself and listen back and see what you can gather from the recording, what information you can get from that. Being your own teacher in that situation is just super invaluable. Identifying the problems and trying to do the problem solving yourself. Maybe it's as simple as, oh, I was rushing on this note, or oh no, I'm playing a wrong note here, or maybe it's something with lining up between multiple players. Oh, I'm not quite lined up with the piano here like I should be. And in the moment, it might be like you're just super frustrated and you're not sure what it is. But going back and listening to the recording can be so helpful. Another thing that's really helpful when you're in a time crunch, and it's just helpful in general, all of these tips can be applied to normal situations as well. But if you can go through the piece before you start looking at it, playing it, and identifying any spots that you know right off the bat are going to be spots that are going to be technically challenging, or rhythmically challenging, parts that might be difficult to line up with another player. And also looking for any phrasing, adding in breath marks. These are things that if you can do this work before you start, you're gonna waste a lot less time. So for me, I went through this piece and I looked at the phrasing, I tried to figure out the structure, I tried to figure out, like in the opening, what each phrase is saying. Like you can literally make up words, something that's gonna help you to make the phrasing feel really internalized and very convincing, and like you know exactly what you want to say with your playing, even if you haven't been working on a piece for many, many months. It's possible to do, but it just takes a little bit more planning and thinking ahead. Even though I haven't been sitting with this piece for months and months, I know exactly what I want to say with each phrase. I know exactly where I want it to go. I feel very secure in that, and it feels like I am creating the music as I'm playing it versus just trying to hang on for dear life and just following something that's on the page. I think if it's a piece that you've heard a lot, like for me, this is a piece that I am pretty familiar with, it makes it a little bit easier because it's already in your ear. So maybe if it's a piece that you haven't heard, looking at it first with just the sheet music and seeing what you can learn from that, and then listening to some recordings and seeing what jumps out at you from that. Another tip is to try to memorize the passage, and it could be as small as like 3 notes, 2 notes, but that I think can help us even if we're not planning on playing it from memory in such a short amount of time. But just to even try to step away from the page and really feel it internalized in our body, in our fingers, in our mind, that can be a really useful thing. And my final tip would be to do some mental practicing. So putting the instrument down and looking at the page and trying to sing through it in your head. And for me, I can also feel the keys. I don't know how to describe this sensation, and maybe one of you out there can help me, but it's like I can feel the keys of the flute without even moving my fingers or touching the flute. And I can feel the spots that I feel hesitant in. So if there's any spot that I'm hesitating, then I know that that's a spot that's not really under my fingers or it's not in my ear. And then that's a spot that I'm going to go back and then, actually practice with the flute in one of the ways that I described earlier. So mental practicing, I think it's really overrated. I don't think we talk about it enough, but it can be a really great tool. And it's not just hearing it in your head, but it's also feeling it physically without actually touching the instrument. I think it can be a really powerful tool. Let me know in the comments what the fastest you've ever had to learn a piece was, and how did it go? What was it for? Maybe you had a last minute gig, maybe you had to step in for someone, but let me know in the comments how that went for you. Maybe you just forgot to practice for your lesson. Let me know. So yeah, I hope that some of that is helpful if you are also experiencing learning a piece in a time crunch. I'm gonna do a little bit more practicing and then I have to teach, and then I'll see you tomorrow for the recording day. I'm about to leave to go to Santiago's house. We are gonna warm up together, do a little rehearsing, and then we are gonna head to the recording studio. Good morning, Miguel. Good morning. Hi. I've got my dress. It's festive. I wore it to a concert with the chamber music collective that I co-direct, and you probably saw that in another vlog, but I think it's super cute. Shoes.